You mentioned that this Snow White is going to have like a modern edge to her. Can you like elaborate on that? Tell us how she's going to sort of depart from who we've seen before?
Of course. Well, I mean, in 1937, the cartoon was so focused on her finding true love, and it's really not even in her mind at all in this film. Like, she's so focused on becoming the leader that her father tells her that she can be, and she's really trying to find the courage to stand up to the evil queen and how to find her own agency and rule a kingdom. And she meets so many incredible people along the way, and maybe she finds love, maybe she finds friendship, but really what's important is that she finds her own voice.
I don't know what's with the trend of remaking old classic Disney movies and putting a modern spin on them, to the point where you change it so much that it barely resembles the original movie. At that point, why don't you just, like, I don't know, make another original movie? Probably because it wouldn't sell so well, so they try to attach nostalgic names to it so they can trick people into coming and seeing it. Except that trick can only work so many times, and it's now failing Disney. Anyway, what doesn't help is the marketing for certain films, like the one for Snow White. The statement Snow White's stars say their modern characters won't be defined by needing a man's love presents a modern perspective of the character Snow White.
Want to know a secret? Promise not to tell? We are standing by a wishing well.
Are we though?
So on one hand, I can understand how this approach can be seen as empowering. It emphasizes the individual strength and autonomy of the character rather than just relying on some romantic relationship to define who you are. Even though, mind you, I don't think that's all the original movie was about, but romance was a part of it, just like it's one of the driving forces in the Deadpool movie. However, there are reasons why this can be seen as problematic, especially when you consider the historical narrative context of Snow White. The Snow White story is based on a fairy tale from the Brothers Grimm written in the 19th century, and it was German. Now, even though the original story, or written story, was a lot more morbid, the original movie that we saw that was based on the fairy tale from the Brothers Grimm in the 19th century had a less morbid take, and that's what they're basing this new movie on. And from what we know, the romantic element between Snow White and the prince is an integral part of the story. And granted, this fairy tale, like many others, was a product of its time, reflecting the values and societal norms when it was written, where women were often defined by their relationships with men. That being said, even still, the romance between Snow White and the prince still serves a narrative purpose.
Today. Oh!
Hello.
Oh.
Did I frighten you? Wait.
I like how that John was like, I'm gonna pop up next to this person who doesn't know who I am and sing mad loud in her ear all of a sudden when she didn't know I was there, and then act all, oh, did I frighten you? Bitch, what do you think? Anyway, that being said, even still, the whole flirting back and forth with Snow White and the prince was a big part of the original movie. It's not merely about Snow White needing a man's love, but about love being a transformative and redeeming force. The romantic theme adds to the richness and the depth of the original story. Love is a part of who human beings are. Human beings are social creatures, and love is a driving force also, and a motivator, of selflessness and sacrifice and betterment. Traditional fairy tales often serve as historical artifacts as well, and they reflect the culture and values of the time they were created. So while it's understandable that people might want to modernize them, completely removing their historical context only ends up losing the cultural heritage or erasing the cultural heritage. And for crying out loud, why does this man look like Rick from The Walking Dead? The hell? Anyway, as I was saying, I understand how in the past women might not have had the best representation all the time, but it definitely doesn't help things when you scale it all the way in the opposite end of the spectrum. I'm pretty sure that's freaking Rick from The Walking Dead. It has to be. Freaking movie is this? Not every story featuring a woman needs to be about her independence or self-sufficiency. Yes, we get it. It's important to have stories that show women as strong and independent. But there's also value in showing women in relationships and exploring the dynamics of love, companionship, and mutual support. Romantic love is a fundamental human experience, and it's okay for a character to desire that. It's a part of who we are, and that's a part of why erotica and romance novels sell so well with women, or specifically feelers, of which women tend to be the majority. In many of these traditional fairy tales, specifically the Disney movies, the prince often serves as a deus ex machina, arriving just in time to save the day with a little characterization. I understand that this is a one-dimensional approach and it can be kind of cringy in modern times, but instead of just completely removing the romantic element, you could do a more nuanced approach, and that could be to flesh out the prince's character, make him more than just a savior figure, but someone with his own challenges and growth, which is what they actually started doing with a lot of the older Disney movies, especially as it went on into the 70s and 80s. The princes were more than just objects, but actual people, not just tools merely used to save the princesses. Maybe actually show things from his perspective as well, more than him just singing about the princess. And in these stories, were specifically portrayed based on what they could give the female or for their provider or protector status, and the females were just catered to. They were the ones that had to rescue the princess and take her out of her bad situation, which was as much objectifying them as it was the princesses. A lot of the classic Disney princesses, though, did demonstrate resilience and strength through the trials that they endured and the growth that they exhibited. So it's not like they didn't have good representation. Like, look at this era, Beauty and the Beast, The Little Mermaid, and all the others that came along. All of these women were empowered. So what exactly are they trying to remake or prove? There is the potential for a harmonious coexistence of romance and multidimensional character development. And I know this sounds crazy, you know, but different interpretations and adaptations can coexist and provide a wider spectrum of stories that cater to diverse perspectives and values. Sure, it's okay to want to modernize and challenge traditional narratives. At the same time, I also think it's important to respect the source material and understand why certain elements were included initially and why they still stand the test of time. Watching an older movie that was surely a product of its time and how society might have been back there, or just part of that universe, should not be a threat on who you are as a person now in modern times. You can look back at old movies and appreciate how far you've come. There might even be traditional values or certain aspects of the older movie or characters in the older movies also that you can also admit that you can inspire to be like. For example, people back then had a little bit more integrity. Anyways, that's just my take. I don't think the whole narrative that every older movie needs to be changed and the female must be the one who is empowered, and to do so they must push the male down so that he is on his back and looking up under her dress, worshipping her effervescence or what have you. I don't think that's necessary. It's okay to build upon something, but what they're doing with a lot of these live action remakes is they're actually tearing down the stories or the structural integrity of the stories, removing the magical elements of what made the story so good in the first place. Thanks so much for watching. This has been Ultiori. You ask, we answer.